Hello, my name is Grian, and today I'm going to be covering how to make better trees in Minecraft. I have done a video on tree making before, but it used to use Voxel Sniper, which I appreciate a lot of people don't actually have access to or fully understand how to use. So this time, we're going to be making them handmade. So let's start with the oak tree, the simple version. There are many ways to make an oak tree, and when I say oak tree, I just mean using the oak log itself. It doesn't actually have to look like a physical oak tree. There are loads of designs, and perhaps if this does well, we can go over some more. So one of the key things is getting the base nice and thick with a trunk at a reasonable height. These handmade trees need to be a bit larger than the original Minecraft ones. You then need to make a bunch of branches. Now this is the hard bit to explain, so hopefully over the course of me circling around this you'll come to understand what I'm trying to achieve here. All the branches have a particular shape, and what I'm trying to do is fill the space around the top of the trunk as much as possible, but at the same time creating some air between the top of the center of the trunk and the tips of the branches themselves, so that when we place the leaves on the tree, they're going to create a proper tree shape. One of the things that people do when they make handmade trees, and do so incorrectly, is they just surround the top of a trunk with leaves and think it looks okay. It doesn't look okay. It looks like a mushroom. It looks like a vanilla tree. So what we're doing here is trying to make it look way more natural, and we accomplish this by making the branches literally branch out from the trunk in a nice manner before we place the leaves on them. And it looks like they're just being slapped on the tree, but that's not true. There is method in the madness, and I'll try and explain it. So you want to focus your attention on placing the leaves, particularly on the tips of the branches as mentioned earlier. But what you will notice is the leaves on the outer edges, that is the ones that your eyes immediately see, I am trying to break up the connection so that the blocks are not actually connected. It makes the tree look a lot rougher and less mushroom-like, which is what we're trying to avoid. So by placing the leaves with no adjacent ones, or maybe even only connected diagonally, you're able to create a much nicer texture. And once you've added them on all of the branches, and maybe even added a few more branches where there's a little bit of space that perhaps you missed when you were planning your branches. But what I'm also doing is mixing in some birch leaf along with the oak ones to create a very subtle texture. It may not be immediately noticeable, but I feel that mixing in different types of leaves, not just birch and oak, but any of the kinds, makes it look a lot nicer, even if it is incredibly subtle. So there we have our oak tree. You will have also noticed that I have changed the log to be 6-sided using a world edit command. Now obviously this isn't accessible if you don't have the plugin, but I will put the command at the bottom of the screen anyway if you want to be able to do that. If not, you're gonna have to spend a lot of time making sure that all the logs are in the correct direction. Now next up we're going to be looking at doing the pine tree. Now the default pine trees don't look that awful. They're a damn sight better than the oak ones. However, we want to make it more lifelike, a little bit bigger, and more shaped. And this one is a little more complicated. To get this one right, you need to have a lot more patience. You need to make a large trunk, so this one may even not be tall enough, and we can extend it if we need to. At the base, we need to make it nice and thick, but also slanting upwards to create a nice shape. Now you'll notice that all the way round the centerpiece I have created an upward gradient. However, they are not all the same height. That is very important in creating a more natural shape. Then at the bottom there's a little bit of a thicker base, and we're going to now add lots of branches. So these are not the prettiest things in the world, but it doesn't matter because they're going to be covered up with leaves. What's important here is getting that downward shape at a variety of angles. So at different Y coordinates in the tree, we need to place branches going downwards, but as we progress higher, the branches need to get a little bit shorter to the point where there are none left. So the ones at the bottom are incredibly long, incredibly thick, and as you go to the top, they need to get progressively smaller. So as you can see, there's a variety of angles used here. Some are at right angles, some are at diagonal, but now we need to place the leaves on them. Now, for the most part, you droop them over the top of the branches that you've placed, which is why why the branch placement is essential for the success of this tree. Now, I'm not actually particularly happy with the way this came out in the end, but this does show the method of producing them. So all you need to do here is literally droop them over and try and give them as much shape as possible. Try and reduce the squareness of each one. You may find that your branches were not quite the right shape and you may need to edit them. But we have a pine tree here, and as you can see, it's not all equal. You may want to add some or remove some branches, but for the most part, it's pretty good. The next tree I want to show you is how to remake the birch tree. Now, this is going to seem incredibly similar to the first one of the oak tree, but this time it is a very different technique when we're placing the branches, and in the end, the branches are what dictate what the tree looks like. So as you can see, instead of creating those drooping branches, we're creating them that go upwards and diagonally. Now this is a very different shape to the oak one that we produced earlier, and the tree will look slightly different as a result, but the principle is the same of trying to create a gap between the main trunk and the leaves on the outside, and the leaf placement is significantly different in this tree. So instead of trying to focus them all at the tips, we're actually trying to create an overall shape of very wispy looking leaves. So there needs to be quite a lot of air gap, but in particular, you may need to add a few branches underneath in order to create that very ball-like shape that a birch tree has. I did look up some pictures of birch trees and tried to replicate it the best I could. But the same principle applies here as we did with the oak tree of trying to create a very wispy looking effect, especially on the outside, trying to create all these leaves that are not really connected adjacently as much as possible. So the goal here is trying to make it look like the leaves are attached on the tiniest little branches or twigs possible, but obviously that isn't very achievable with the Minecraft blocks because they don't really go that thin. However, it is achievable just by making the leaves look very wispy and attached diagonally rather than adjacent like the original is, which is just a remake of the oak one. And there we have the birch. You can see that the structure of the tree is incredibly different to the first one. And then we go back to the pine tree, which I actually made a few alterations to when you weren't looking, and the shape is pretty good. It could have been remade a little better, probably needs a few more branches, but the method is still the same. It's more of an art form trying to create these trees by eye. You can't really get a method down to a T and teach people how to use it. You need to use your imagination with these. And we're back at the oak tree, a very good interpretation of the vanilla trees, if you ask me. Anyone that wants to create a tree repository will need to create multiple versions of these trees if you wanted to create a good looking forest. You can't just make one tree and expect it to be pasted over and over again and look good. If you want to create a forest, you're going to have to create multiple versions of heights and variants in order to achieve that. So, that's it from me everyone. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave me a comment and say if you want more trees to be transformed, would you even call them transformed, remade, how to make Minecraft trees look better. I could do the jungle ones, the dark oak, I'd probably have to do a little bit of research on what they should look like, the acacia trees. If that is something that interests you, if you like building more natural stuff, or just improving like your garden or a park, or you want something different, now is the time to tell me, because I'm trying to work out what stuff people want to learn how to build. I hope this helped. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.